Hello everyone, it's Theme Park Avenue, I'm Eric, and now that we're at the end of the year, I think it'd be great to recap by looking at the top 10 theme parks of 2022. So before we begin, make sure you subscribe to this channel so you know when new theme park content comes out. I do much more than rankings, there's also reviews of parks, and content both serious and funny. Now one thing that must be gotten out of the way, this is based on my experiences only in the years 2021 and 2022, so I have a fresh picture in my mind of the parks, and that's how the rankings will be influenced. Now first, I have a few honorable mentions before the top 10. Knoebels in Pennsylvania is a wonderful park. Phoenix is a great wooden coaster. There's such a charming atmosphere, the food is top notch, it's affordable, and it's a fun time. Though I did unfortunately have to kind of sandwich it in between some other parks, so I did not get a full experience, and that might have been enough to put it in the top 10. Six Flags Over Texas is an underrated park, with pretty strong theming in one part for a Six Flags park especially, and I love the DC area's aesthetic overall. Not to mention the underrated coasters New Texas Giant, Mr. Freeze Reverse Blast, Titan, Runaway Mountain, and quite a bit more. Carowinds was really close, and it has some insane top roller coasters, with Fury 325 being one of the best out there. However, the operations of my 2022 visit were enough to hold it back, primarily due to the absolutely terrible capacity and dispatches of Fury 325. So that's the best and worst part of the park, I guess. But to be fair, Copperhead Strike is great, Intimidator is great when it's open. Afterburn is great, Nighthawk is underrated, so it's a strong park, but definitely not quite top 10. And then I have to shout out Tivoli Gardens in Copenhagen, Denmark. I did not go during the period that's being judged, but if I had and it was like my 2018 experience, it would definitely be high up on the list. Now for the top 10. Number 10 is Six Flags Fiesta Texas. This San Antonio park is absolutely wonderful in the theming department. No Six Flags park comes close to the aesthetic. It's simply beautiful to walk around because you have Spassburg, the medieval area, mainly German heritage themed. You have Los Festivales, a vibrant, colorful area, and I can go into every area here, but I've done that before in a video, and I recommend you check that one out actually. That one really analyzes the beautiful and clever theming of the park. But on top of that, there's some great roller coasters. Iron Rattler is among my favorite RMC hybrids. And then there's some good ones. Superman Krypton Coaster is great. Goliath's really strong. Poltergeist is fun. Wonder Woman was closed when I went, and Dr. Diabolical had yet to open. But I think if those were open, this could be a spot or two higher as well. The main issue is that there were quite a few ride closures. I'd say it didn't impact my day as much as Carowinds, just due to the overall crowd levels in general, and that's why it got a spot above it, that and the wonderful appearance. But overall, Fiesta Texas is a great park, and I highly recommend visiting it. It's one of the best in the Six Flags chain. Number 9 is Hershey Park. I think many would expect this to be higher, but it's a little overblown, I think. Some people say it's not the number 1 park in the world, or at least America. And for me, it basically has every flaw that Cedar Point has, but it doesn't have roller coasters quite as good to back it up. Here's the thing. Candymonium is my number 1 of the park, and I hold it to a slightly higher esteem than most, but probably not by a lot. It's very close to top 25, but other than that, the roller coaster collection is abundant, and there are a lot of very good rides. But compared to most others on this list, I feel like there aren't really great rides. That said, there's plenty of other things to enjoy about the park. Operations were very strong, with not a single closure I can remember on a major ride, with the exception of one on Reese's Cup Fusion. The appearance is wonderful. I especially love the area where they had to cram in Sky Rush, Great Bear, Super Duper Looper, and Comet. It works surprisingly well. The food, of course, is Hershey, so you're gonna enjoy that kind of thing. And if you're into merchandise, I'll say this is pretty weak in that department because they basically focus on the chocolate parts rather than the actual theme park. And then there's the free Hershey's Chocolate World stuff, such as the Chocolate Tour Dark Ride, that's right outside the park gates. So there is a lot to enjoy here, even though I don't think the roller coasters are quite top tier. Number 8 is Six Flags Magic Mountain. kinda in the same boat as Hershey to an extent, because outside of the phenomenal top 3 roller coasters, I don't think the rides are quite as up there as a lot of people put them. So Batman the Ride is my 4th favorite. I will admit, I have yet to ride Wonder Woman Flight of Courage, and that would probably be 4th favorite, based on my Jersey Devil experiences. But other than that, you have very strong wooden coaster in Apocalypse the Ride, and the awesome but short Full Throttle. Riddler's Revenge is the best stand-up coaster, but it's definitely gotten rougher over the years. Superman Escape from Krypton is a bit underwhelming. West Coast Racers, I've talked about that one enough. The other thing that stands out with Magic Mountain is that even though the roller coasters look beautiful and the location is stunning, it's not super well kept. And at the very least, I will say operations were not that bad when I went. I went during spring break, and no lines with the exception of X2 being the one really bad one, was over 90 minutes, and for a day like that, that's acceptable. I definitely thought they did a good job. The main thing is just the roller coasters don't quite bring the park up for me the way they do for others, similar to Hershey Park. And while I still do love walking around the park except for trying to get to Superman, it's a very nice place to be around for riding the roller coasters, but I must say, as an amusement park, I found much less amusement than the top 7. Speaking of which, number 7 is Silver Dollar City. Another that could easily be top 3 for so many. And I understand why. In terms of flaws, it's kinda hard to pinpoint, because there really isn't anything wrong with the park. The only thing I will say that kinda bothered me through the day was the fact that the entrance signs for rides are not really that close to the ride entrances, so you might be a little confused finding your way around. And in general, the layout you will get lost in, but there's kind of a charm to that because it's a beautiful place to walk around. I think it's possibly the best looking theme park in America, and I might stand by that, so that's one of the big things that boost it up. The roller coasters, they are good here. That said, similar to Hershey and Magic Mountain, they're not the launching off point they could be necessarily, but it's not like people are going to Silver Dollar City saying, this is the roller coaster capital of the world, the way they would for Magic Mountain maybe. So I'm not disappointed by it. And I still love Outlaw Run, Time Traveler, Powder Keg, and Wildfire. I also think the dark rides and water rides, Grandfather's Mansion, they're fun. But I must be honest, if not for Marvel Cave, I'm not certain this would rank even top 10 possibly. But Marvel Cave is indeed a marvelous experience. I love nature. I enjoy hiking and walking through caves and such as well, and Marvel Cave is quite beautiful. The history is fascinating, and doing that at a theme park is an unforgettable experience. I still love the appearance, the food, the top tier staff. This park, objectively, is probably top 3. It's not one that I thought spoke to me the way it does for a lot of other people outside of Marvel Cave, but Marvel Cave definitely spoke to me in a way that earned it a top 7 spot. Number 6 is Six Flags Great Adventure. Yes, one I'm sure so many are like, what? How is that better than Hershey Park, Magic Mountain, and Silver Dollar City? Well, the day I went in summer was one of my favorite days I've ever had in an amusement park. I had gone once beforehand. It was fine, but this time was absolutely legendary. It was pouring rain on and off throughout the day, and I loved it. That might sound weird, but being able to experience rides in terrible, painful rain is kind of fun. Maybe that's just me, but I enjoyed it so much. The rides had no lines, and even so, all of them except for El Toro were running at really high capacity. So that's the reason why there was no line. If they were running one train, you'd be standing outside in the rain for a good 20 minutes waiting to get on a ride. I thought the roller coaster collection, of course, was wonderful here, and I personally think it's a lot better than most of the others named so far. Kingda Ka is top tier, El Toro is also a top 25 roller coaster, then you have Jersey Devil, Nitro, Medusa, Batman the Ride, Superman Ultimate Flight, underrated Dark Knight coaster to be there, strong flat ride collection, the Safari, which I kinda count with the park. It doesn't have as much an impact as something like Marvel Cave, but it's also a nice bonus. The park's layout is not nearly as hard to manage as most people say. I think only the Medusa Dead End is an issue, and I thoroughly enjoyed my time here for the fantastic roller coasters, great operations, and everything besides the locker policy. I've talked about that a little before, but Great Adventure simply is great. Number 5 is Six Flags Great America. This was my favorite of Six Flags parks, and I've been to all except Mexico, so I feel that I am able to say that. It's not necessarily the number one best, but my experience there was my favorite. The roller coaster collection, it does not have a number one that beats something like Fiesta Texas or Magic Mountain or Great Adventure, but Raging Bull is such a fun ride. And so many rides here are just fun adventures. Raging Bull, American Eagle, Viper, all of them like that. They're fun rides that, even though they're long rides that might meander at points, they're just enjoyable for me. The short rides are also pretty great, with absolutely phenomenal standout elements on Goliath and Max Force. X-Flight is very underrated. The DC roller coasters are excellent as always. And the one other thing I have to point out for the roller coasters is there is not a single dud. There are no roller coasters I would not ride again. Demon was a bit rough, but I still liked it to the point that this has the best, worst roller coaster in a Six Flags park, if that makes sense. Sprocket Rockets is the worst coaster in the park, but it's still better than every other park's worst coaster. That might seem like a weird thing to say because best, worst, I know is confusing, but my point is that there are so many excellent rides at this park. The flat ride collection is admittedly lacking, but there's other stuff to enjoy. I thought the staff, and honestly the clientele, were some of the best in any park I went to this year. The people were friendly, and I was able to strike up friendships with quite a few. It was great talking to them, the ride-offs were really funny, and I thoroughly enjoyed waiting in line. The other thing is that operations were pretty much the best in the chain, and the appearance is second only to Fiesta Texas, with the skyline being only beaten by Cedar Point. This park is underrated for me. I think it is the best Six Flags park, and it is, just like Great Adventure, great. But in a way few other parks are, it's just unadulterated fun. Number 4 is Islands of Adventure. This one I could also see being higher, but it's a pretty high spot. I can't really put it too much higher. It's everything great about Silver Dollar City, plus excellent ride collection that beats Silver Dollar City by a good amount. Velocicoaster, definitely a better number 1, and then you go on with Hulk, excellent, Spider-Man, best dark ride in the world, Hagrid's, really fun launch coaster, and it goes on from there. Best water rides of any park by far, best themed of any park I've been to. I would say Silver Dollar City might be more beautiful, but the theming is more impressive here. And the lands work so well together. The layout is one of the best. The operations are probably top 2 on this entire list, and I just think it's a very hard park to beat, but it was still beaten by a few. There's really no complaints here. It's just that there are 3 parks I hold a bit closer. Number 3 is Cedar Point. It does somewhat pay me to put this here. If I were ranking based off just 2021, Cedar Point would definitely take the top spot. Any year besides 2022 would have taken the top spot, but I'm considering 2021 and 2022, and this is a bit of a balance, because Cedar Point this year was held back by operation issues. There were many days throughout the year, including the days I went, where several rides were closed. There were points where 60% of the roller coasters were down. The ride-offs were still doing their best on most rides, but unfortunately, when the crowds have to kind of clump into a few roller coasters because others aren't open, the lines are long. And I know that's a common thing and all, but it means there are a total of 6 roller coasters to enjoy, and you have to wait, even with Fastlane, probably 45 minutes to get on one, and once you get off, there's still only 5 others for you to enjoy. It's not the best park experience, there are fortunately several redeeming factors. First of all, the roller coaster collection is still the best of any. Steel Vengeance, Millennium Force, Valraven, Maverick, Top Thrill Dragster, rest in peace, but it is considered because of 2021. Gatekeeper, Raptor, Rougarou, Magnum XL 200. Not all of these are top tier rides, but I'd say over half of them for me are phenomenal. The appearance of the park is also something to write home about. The roller coasters all look beautiful, and just walking around, if you're filming with your phone, that is a fun time in and of itself. The food is underrated here. The staff is typically great. I will say, something I kind of mentioned in a different video reviewing Cedar Point, there were things that were uncharacteristic for the staff in 2022, but still, the staff overall was fantastic. Shout out to Niles one more time this year. And there really isn't anything besides the ride closures, and I guess technically ride-offs to some extent, that's holding back Cedar Point. It's just that I didn't have a huge amount of fun when I was there most recently because unfortunately, when you go to a park that's main claim to fame is roller coasters and the roller coasters are not available, it does take away to an extent. But I still adore this park, and I'm sure in future years, it can get right back up to number 1. Number 2 is Busch Gardens Tampa. My home park, I must admit right off the bat. I went quite a few times this year, and a handful in 2021. And this gets an edge over Cedar Point because I thought it was a bit more enjoyable as a whole. Consistency was key. So obviously the roller coaster collection, while not great in number, is one of the best in the United States, possibly the world. I mean, Iron Gwazi is my favorite roller coaster, so that's a start. And it goes on from there. You got Montu, Kumba, SheiKra, Cheetah Hunt. Falcon's Fury is my favorite drop tower. The animals are well incorporated and stand out much more than Six Flags Great Adventure Safari. The train ride and sky ride are special experiences. The food is probably my favorite of any park, primarily for, say it with me now, Twisted Tail pretzels. I've said it many times. The layout is great. The operations are the one flaw outside of the collection of flat rides being a bit weaker. But for the most part, they're not bad. It's just Iron Gwazi having slow dispatches and Cheetah Hunt and Cobra's Curse having a lot of breakdowns. But if it's just 3 rides and there's plenty more to enjoy, that's better than 9 out of 15. Sorry to keep throwing shade, but I'm just trying to make the point as to why I did put Busch Gardens above Cedar Point this year. I think overall, Cedar Point might be the better park, but Busch Gardens Tampa had a pretty unbeatable atmosphere this year. I thoroughly enjoyed all my visits, and maybe just thanks to the Iron Gwazi hype train and the fact that it is my favorite roller coaster, I had to give it a top 2 spot. But number 1, the king of this year, it's in the name, Kings Island. Kings Island was kind of like Cedar Point to an extent, though this time I had not been in 6 years. Going in 2022, I will admit the second day had its issues. There were breakdowns. Every major ride except Mystic Timbers closed down at some point on the Saturday I was there, with Diamondback being down the whole day. But what I can't forget, similar to Cedar Point, is that the night I got there was on par with the best days of Cedar Point. Beast in the pouring rain is one of my favorite ride experiences. Night rides on so many major attractions. The park at its worst was significantly more enjoyable than Cedar Point because the operations were way better. No disrespect to Cedar Point operators, but Kings Island was on another level this year. I've talked about it before. Banshee had like 15-second dispatches at points. It was insane. That might be an exaggeration, but you get the point. And at its best, Kings Island is just a magical place. In terms of objectivity, I think when we go down these certain aspects, the layout is the best of any park I went to this year for sure. Islands of Adventure is right there, but Kings Island, given the bigger size and all, it's impressive how they're able to handle that. Operations were the best most likely, and the roller coaster collection is also wonderful. This is obviously based on opinions, but I think the top 5 here is the best with the exception of Cedar Point. You have Diamondback, Mystic Timbers, Banshee, The Beast, and Orion, all excellent. Beyond that, you have plenty of good rides, and while a lot of them are kind of on that Six Flags Magic Mountain level I was talking about earlier, I think the top 5, being much better than Magic Mountain's top 3 or Hershey Park's top anything, that's kind of what gives it the edge. The food here is great, the staff is friendly, there are so many experiences outside of the roller coasters to enjoy, the atmosphere is wonderful, and the park looks beautiful all the way around, with some areas like Rivertown and Area 72 just being standouts. So overall, while I can't perfectly pinpoint my reasons for every ranking on here, that is my top 10, and Kings Island is the #1 theme park I went to in 2022. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Comment down below your favorite parks from this year and how wrong I am. Subscribe for more content. I'll see you next time.